our nation's facing right now and why this is a huge discussion. Will we finally have some sort of immigration reform?
How fortuitous for Republicans, whose main emphasis, and for most Americans, should be border security before you have a pathway to citizenship. So you trot Chuck Schumer down there and a couple other Democrats and say, let's take a look. And you look up, and there's a woman scaling an 18-foot fence. By the way, she must be saying, what a bad day I'm having. Chuck Schumer says, quote, you can read and you can study, you can talk about it until you see things. It doesn't become reality. I'll be able to explain this to my colleagues. Many of my colleagues say, why do we need to do anything more on the border? That is something.
Was that from Senator Schumer?
Yeah, that's from Senator Schumer.
Because I also read quotes from him that said that he wasn't sure how he was going to handle this and that it was probably drug-related and that there were other kinds of reasoning.
He also said, what I learned today is we have adequate manpower, Schumer said, but not adequate technology. And John McCain has been saying that all along. Also, Secretary of Homeland Security Janet Napolitano says and has said the border is as secure today as it has ever been, which is extraordinary. Here's the thing, though. So what? The woman's caught by ICE? She's going to get released anyway. That happens all the time.
Yeah, I don't know the individual situation, but I will say this. The president spoke to two Spanish-language stations yesterday, and he says he's optimistic, as are the Gang of Eight, that there'll be a draft of a piece of legislation by April 8th, and he could be signing something by the end of the summer. The sticky point's going to be, how do you essentially say, by the power of me, the border's secure? The president is going to say it's fine, and Republicans like Senator McCain will say it clearly isn't. So somehow, if they want to, they certainly should come up with a recipe for declaring it secure or not.
Especially when you factor into what Sequester is now going to be doing, apparently, to Border Patrol. Apparently, it's going to cut 20% of the force because of the Sequester. And starting April 7th, right around the same time they're going to unveil this legislation, agents will be forced to leave the border unmanned in order to work within the shift time constraints. Remember, we've been hearing a lot about this with federal jobs. Border Patrol agents, TSA workers at the airports, FAA workers, that they cannot work overtime anymore because of Sequester. Well, Charles Krauthammer, last night on Special Report, says he's just a teensy weeny bit skeptical.
I'm skeptical about the motive. As if there isn't anywhere else in the budget of this huge department that is constructing a headquarters for years and years now, where I'm sure a lot of money ends up in the concrete. Can you imagine how much waste is in that huge department that is remaining untouched? And don't tell me that the money is unshiftable. The Republicans have offered to give the administration the power to move the money around. Obama has said he not only won't do it, but he would veto a bill that allowed him to shift the money around. This is clearly a stunt to get people to hurt at the receiving end of services like the Border Patrol, like White House tours, and to blame it on Republicans. It's not going to work.
And so what they're going to do is they're cutting 20%, and what that means is no more 10-hour shifts. People go up to 8 hours and then no overtime. So for 2 hours, our American border is going to not be protected. So we're not spending money on protecting our border and ultimately our national sovereignty, but instead we're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on federal employees who simply do not show up for work or are paid to be on standby. Tom Coburn, the senator from the great state of Oklahoma, made this clear.
See, Tom Coburn came out and says, look, there's people who are getting paid just to so-called stand by. When you're talking about a 2-year cost of $13.1 million of people just hired to stand by in case something happens. You would think in times like this, those people asked to stand by would stand down. Here's what Tom Coburn put in writing. Says it makes little sense to furlough air traffic controllers and Border Patrol agents while retaining employees who are AWOL or standing by, not performing duties, or sitting idle awaiting security clearances. And he goes out to list it, and the numbers are flat out staggering. And what everyone's doing is, I think it's flat out laziness. I know the continuing resolutions allows people additional flexibility to help out with the Pentagon cuts. But if someone just turn around and go, listen, I got a better idea. I'm not going to furlough my guys, my women. I'm going to go handle this standby situation.
But it starts from the top. And, you know, I think if any of us were given a duty of, or the opportunity, I should say, of being able to lead and being able to have Congress say to the President of the United States, hey, you can have the power to look through everything that you're in charge of in this nation, and you can check off what you want to cut. that seems to me that I would love that opportunity to be able to finally put to rest some of this waste that has been pulling this country down for decades. And yet, I think the headline here that's being lost in the shuffle is that President Obama has basically said, no, I'll take a pass on that.
Yeah.
I don't want that leadership opportunity. That, to me, is stunning.
Because the Republicans offered it to him, and he said, if you give it to me, I'm going to veto it. Meanwhile, it looks as if the administration is backing away in part on part of this Sequester. Remember we told you about how, because of the Sequester, military tuition assistance was being scaled back. Well, now you can actually thank a couple of U.S. senators, James Huff, a Republican from Oklahoma, and Kay Hagan, a Democrat from North Carolina, because they were able to get the money back in there. It is now going forward. You don't have to worry about that from here on out.
And a New York senator was also, former military guy, was instrumental in trying to do that, at least at the state level. So that's great to know that that's happening federally. The furlough days also being cut from 22 days to 14. Remember, we were talking about a lot of federal employees. That was a huge chunk of their paycheck that was going to be suddenly gone. So now that's 22 to 14 days.
Yeah. All right, so that's good. So, you know, the continuing resolution allows the government to be funding up until September. Well, that was signed, agreed on, and signed by the president on Tuesday. So, therefore, there is a little bit of flexibility in the cuts. And I think the sequester has been a disaster for the administration, who wanted a PR push to have everybody think that if $85 billion is going to hurt so much, we better stop cutting here, and it just hasn't worked.
But it also would show for the future how painful cuts can be, so that looking down the road, voters would never vote for cuts.
Well, that is my point exactly, that if this is painful, no one will ever vote when we actually come to securing a budget. And right now, people, including a lot of the press, questioning Jay Carney, a lot of the White House press, are not taking it. They're seeing right through it.
Honeymoon could be over. Anyway, dozen minutes after the top of the hour.